Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm thrilled to have you here wherever you're listening. If it's here in New York, somewhere else in the United States, or anywhere else on this planet, thanks for being with me. And I'm in such a great mood. I just stopped speaking with Gus Frerotte. And Gus had an amazing NFL career. I mean, this guy played for 15 years, threw for over 100 touchdown passes. He had a great career, really did. But what really got me excited is what he's done post-career and how he's transitioned from football into being a significant part of two companies, one especially that I believe will have a major impact on how people look at concussions. And it's really an amazing episode. You're going to love this one. But before we jump in, please make sure to subscribe. Leave me feedback on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you're listening to this. I'd love to hear emails directly. Shoot me a note to mark@markmoyer.com. Go to my website, markmoyer.com, where you're going to get not only access to all my previous episodes, but lots of other great content. There's videos, there's white papers, there's all kinds of stuff on there that can help you with your business and your career. It's what I do for a living. I love being a coach, but I also love hosting this podcast, and you're going to love this episode. Gus Frerotte, you're going to dig this. Happy listening. Hey everybody, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Today I have Gus Frerotte with me, a legendary in a few people's minds, NFL quarterback, and his own mind too, maybe, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But more important, we're going to talk about what he's doing now after he left the game. It's a great story, and welcome to the show, Gus.
Thanks for having me on, Mark.
No, it's absolutely my pleasure. And, we're going to cover a whole lot of ground today. I really am impressed with the work that you're doing now with a couple of different companies, but one in particular. We're going to talk about them in a minute. But before we jump into that, I think some of the people listening will be curious to hear a little bit more, Gus, about not just your NFL playing career, but maybe a little bit before that. I'm interested to hear, what was it that one day you said, you know what, I'd love to play football? Like what was it that brought football into the forefront versus some of the other sports that you may have been playing?
It's a really good story because I started really playing in eighth grade. When I was in eighth grade, my first practice, I came home and I said, my foot's killing me and I don't know if I should play. And my dad said, I just bought you those new cleats, tie them tighter, right? So I go out and play the whole season. After season, still injury, pain, whatever. Mom takes me to the hospital. The doctor says, your foot's broken. How long has it been like this? I said, since the first day of practice.
Oh,
and so, when you have a dad who's worked in a mill in Pittsburgh and you've seen him take a chainsaw across his arm and say, we'll finish the job and then I'll go to the hospital. You're kind of like, okay, yeah, this is how it's going to be. Then the next year in ninth grade, I actually broke my neck playing football. And I crushed the fourth vertebrae. Didn't play football for 2 years. So no ninth and 10th grade football. Wow. Came back, started back in 11th grade. Didn't really want to do it. The coach, which is my father-in-law now, said, hey, just come up, help us get ready for the season. We're going to paint the bleachers. I mean, I grew up in a small town and all the players did everything to get it ready, clean the locker room, do all that stuff. So just come up and help with that. And so that's kind of where I started getting back into the game. And then I could always throw the ball. And so that was interesting to me. I loved baseball growing up and I always played baseball, won state championships, just really enjoyed it. And then as I got older, my senior year, I was getting recruited in baseball and football. Football more for the sense, because we ran the wing tee, and I don't know if you know much about the wing tee, but throw the ball a lot in the wing tee. It's a lot of handoffs and running.
Yep. Options.
We actually threw, I probably threw it like 40 times in my career. Right. But I was 6'4", 210 pounds. And so you can't teach size. That's basically what they always say.
Yeah.
Baseball, I loved. I was a pitcher. I wasn't the fastest guy. And so running the first was a little slower than other people. But I loved the game, right? Could pitch, play third base, always had a strong arm, throw people out from outfield. Always loved that. Loved to hit, just enjoyed the game immensely. And then it came time for college. And, I was getting recruited by a lot of smaller D3 schools for baseball and then Division I schools for football. And so for me to go and not have to pay for school and not have to have my parents worry, and my dad was more of a football guy than a baseball guy. So that's kind of the route I chose. And then got recruited by several schools and ended up going to the University of Tulsa with Coach David Rader. And just kind of the rest is history. Played there 5 years, went through ups and downs of football, and then was lucky enough to be drafted by the Redskins.
So what was tell me a little bit about Tulsa, because, was it a big change from being in Pittsburgh your whole life or that area? And I mean, is Tulsa different? Was it similar? What was it like?
It's a lot different than Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh, you don't see cowboy boots and cowboy hat.
That's right.
It was just a big different mentality. But the wonderful thing about Tulsa for me was that we had a coach who recruited Pittsburgh and actually had a very big group of guys that were playing football at Tulsa that, we had our own little team. We all came from Western Pennsylvania
cool.
West Virginia, some of us, but we all got recruited. And so we had our little own home there within that group. And I can remember just going out to, let's say when you go to college, you're going to go out with all the guys at night, in the off season and things like that. And then we would go to what they call a cowboy bar. There's all of us in jeans and backwards hats, and we walk in, everybody has cowboy boots and a cowboy hat on. And so that was a different, way of life. That was really the first time I ever heard country music. Was the first time I went to Tulsa.
So how long did it take for you before you got your first hat? You had to get a cowboy hat.
Never got a cowboy hat.
What?
I had to wear a pair of jeans or a pair of boots, but just never even really bought a pair of boots. Never liked it. Just
wow.
Which is okay. I mean, a lot of people wear them, and a lot of people break them in, and a lot of guys I'm friends with, I still have them. But I don't know. It just never was for me. I always liked tennis shoes. So,
got it.
But it was different. But it was great, because it got me out of that bubble that I was living in a small town called Ford City, Pennsylvania. And that was my first experience of going to meet people that weren't like me, that were different, that were came from a different background, came from a different religion, and it was really interesting to see. And it brought everything really, and what my parents taught me was just to accept everyone. And they may have different parts of their life going on than you. They may go to a different kind of church or but we all are all inclusive, right? That's what my parents taught, and that's what I always took from them. That just because somebody's a little different doesn't mean they're not a good person. Excellent.
Good point. Especially in today's chaos that's cooking in our country. So you attend Tulsa, and then you're obviously playing fairly well there. I mean, well enough that a couple of things happen. I mean, what happened on draft day, or how'd you find out that you made it? I mean, tell me about that moment that you.
Well, it's pretty interesting. So I met my wife after my second year in college, and then we did a part thing. She was from Pittsburgh. As I said, her father was my high school football coach, and we're still married now after almost 25 years.
That's amazing.
And so we've been through this whole journey together. And after my senior year of football, I actually moved back to Pittsburgh, and I lived with her, and I worked for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I would go down, and I was training their staff and other people at the facility, because I was just looking for an internship to come home. And a lot of times the schools will pay for that to, fulfill your requirements to graduate.
Sure.
And then, so the whole time as I'm going through all this, I'm getting, the coaches will come in and work you out. I didn't really have a pro day because I wasn't at school. So my pro day, I had to actually go work out for coaches in the Pittsburgh Steelers facilities. So it was kind of crazy. So I worked out for a bunch of coaches, and and then was invited to go to the combine. So went to the combine, did that. I was one of the guys who throw every day. I didn't really care how I got there, right? And then I was able to get there. And then, so when you get an agent and you start talking, your agent starts finding out that, hey, this could be a possibility for you. I think you're going to get drafted. So then we were at my parents' house. We had everybody there. Second day of the draft, get drafted by the Redskins. They give you a call right before. And it's pretty exciting stuff. And, everybody there, when you come from a small town, everybody knows what's going on. And so everybody was there, was pretty excited to see me get drafted. And then the first year, I'm a rookie. We have a first-round pick named Heath Schuler. Yeah. And, I'm thinking, I made the team. That was my goal. And then all of a sudden, the coach says, hey, Gus, he's hurt. The other guy's hurt. We're going to play you this week, and you're going to start against the Indianapolis Colts. And so that turned into a really big thing with back home, people going to the local fire hall and watching the game, and my wife being crazy supportive and involved in everything. And so it was just a crazy, crazy story and crazy journey. And then that led to, that first game being able to go out and throw 4 touchdowns, and then just led to an incredible career.
Yeah, I'll say, we'll talk about that in a minute, but look, you had a very long career. Obviously, the vast majority of your fellow NFL players do not. And, a lot of them tend to, they have shorter careers. They struggle with lots of things, whether it's injuries or their skill set goes downhill. But you had a long career. You played for 15 years. You threw for over 100 touchdowns. You had a lot of accomplishments, a lot of great stuff. But you went through yourself a fair amount of injury, right? So without going through the whole laundry list of every body part top to bottom that you managed to disfigure and destroy and all that stuff, tell me a little bit more about, what are some of the things that you did as a player, and maybe what would you recommend now to players, whether they're in middle school, high school, college, professional, anywhere, and they go through any sort of an injury that either keeps them out a week or two, or maybe longer, or maybe they've got an injury that they're just playing through because they feel that they need to in order to keep their job and keep their position on the team. What kind of advice do you have for them?
Well, one thing growing up I learned from my dad was basically that you can't whine about anything, right? You get hurt, you get back up, and you get back in there. And I think one of the biggest things is trying to realize, are you injured? Are you just hurt? You know what I mean? Like there's a big difference between, can I play through this? Can I push myself to where I can continue to play without being a detriment to myself or the team? And there's a fine line there to trying to figure that out. And I had enough in high school that I got to figure that part out, right? And it's not an easy thing to be injured, right? Because your team's out there, you're almost forgotten about because, life moves on. It's no different than in life, right? So if you have to miss work's still going on. Right. And you got to catch up when you come back. And so the thing I always say is if you want to stay a part of that team and with that organization, you got to go back in there every day, even if you're hurt. Now, obviously, if you have surgery and you got to be laid up for a week or so, but as soon as you can get out of bed, as soon as you can get back into the training room, into the weight room, and continue to make yourself better, that's what you have to do. And you have to fight through some of those things, because I think in the end, especially for young kids who get hurt, right? Like I said, when I was in 9th grade, I had a horrific injury, right? And I went through the teasing, and I went through, when you're wearing a neck brace in high school, that's tough. And I've been bullied, all right, by people, and just had to suck it up because I knew that there's something bigger out there for me. And so you go through it and you do the things that you have to do to make yourself a better person. And all those things that I've had in my life have humbled me. And I think that's the other key, is that you got to stay humble and you got to work your butt off. And through an injury, through adversity, whatever it may be, and you just got to stay persistent. And that's the only way. And it's no different than trying to find a job when you transition from football into the real world.
Right. In terms of the advice part of things, you talk about the importance of sort of fighting through an injury. I think some people say, yeah, well, we get that, Coach Gus, but it's also maybe important to understand sort of the mental part of what you have to do when you're going through an injury. And let's say you are laid up for a little while. Let's say you've had some sort of surgery, or you've got a high ankle sprain. You've got something that's keeping you off the field, off the rink, off the whatever it is, right? How do you, what kind of advice can you give people when they just feel really bummed out and depressed that they're not with their fellow teammates out there? What can they do to keep themselves active, to keep themselves engaged? What kind of advice do you have to keep their mind tagging along with the physical part as the physical part gets better?
Right. I think one of the greatest things you can do is go to your coach. Like if you're an athlete, and go to your coach and say, hey, coach, look, I know I'm hurt and I may be at home. If you have to call him or go see him, say, what can I do to stay involved? Right. And the coach says, well, every coach has a different philosophy in all this, right, obviously. But for me, I would say, hey, look, I'll send you the game plan every week and you just keep studying it. Right. And the biggest thing you can do right now is most coaches will say, get healthy. Right. Well, what does that mean, coach? My advice is to ask questions. Right.
Great.
If you don't ask questions, you don't know what the coach is thinking. And the coach doesn't know what you're thinking. So when you go in and say, hey, coach, I really want to be a part of the team so I don't miss things. What can I do? All right, coach say, well, get healthy. Well, what does that mean, coach? Right? How do I get healthy, right? Oh, see our trainer. He's going to give you a protocol on what you need to do to rehab and get yourself back to where you are. And then here's some things that you can do besides just rehabbing, okay?
Right.
It's maybe studying the game plan. Maybe you can come in and help us with things. Do things in the locker room, whatever it is, to stay a part of the team, because there's nothing worse than coming back after 4 weeks and you feel alienated from the guys, right? Because those guys are working hard every day, right? And they're out in their practice, they're sweating, they're putting their time in, they've won a game or two or whatever it is. And then you feel like all you've done is sit in a hot tub.
Yeah, right.
The biggest thing is to do that. You have to do that, but then stay involved somehow with everyone.
Perfect. Stay involved. That's great. So skipping ahead a little bit, you've played your career, your entire NFL career. Then you decided, well, you know what? It's time. I've played a long time. How old were you when you retired?
I was 38 years old when I retired.
Oh my God, a geezer. So anyway, the ripe old age of 38. Isn't that amazing when people say, God, he was sold at 38. Now that you're whatever you are, we don't need to say it, but I mean, it's weird that, the world of professional sports is so kind of upside down, right? Because you're retiring, most people retire in their 20s, and it's hard to imagine that you're stopping something that you've spent your whole life doing at that age, right? So the transition for most athletes can be really challenging because they've been practicing and playing a sport for so long, and now suddenly it's like, whoa, well, what do I do next? So tell me, Gus, you 38, you decided, you made the decision, well, it's time to, I can't do this anymore, whether it's injuries or just, competing against the younger guys, et cetera. What was your transition period like, and what did you start doing, afterwards? What was the first things you started doing after you retired?
Yeah, so 38, that's like 25 years straight of football, right? Yeah. Injuries, non-injuries, just playing, loving the game, being a part of it. And then in that time, I've also had kids, and they're playing football, and they're enjoying it. So my transition when I decided to retire was, and usually what happens, most guys do this, they'll call their friends that are older who have retired and left the game, and you say, how did you know when it was time, right? It's just a tough thing to figure that out. And everybody says, well, you'll just know, right? And so these things are going through your head. I just left the team, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to be done now. I'm not coming back. Well, then a coach calls me and says, hey, we'd love you to come work with our young quarterback. This was the Minnesota Vikings, Brad Childress. And my wife and I were actually in Charlottesville, Virginia, looking for houses because we love that area. Okay. And I took the phone call, and I looked at her, and she said, yeah, you got to go. You got to go play and, be a part of the team. And thinking that I'm going to go and just be a backup and just go enjoy one more year of football or 2 more years. I did a 2-year contract. Here I end up playing, I think I played 12 games that year, and we ended up winning our division. And so it was really an exciting year. But then at the end, got cut Obviously, you're 38. They're bringing somebody else in, but it's kind of funny. They brought somebody older in, Brett Favre. So
I'm not familiar with him. Is he? He played Brett Favre? Not. He's an upstart, right? He barely did anything, and I'm surprised he replaced you.
Yeah, missed so many games. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. What a slacker. Yeah, go ahead.
But then, so I go back to St. Louis where we were living, and I knew all the people at the Rams, and I said, maybe I can just come in. I'd love to help. Maybe let me try out, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because at that point you're saying, I don't know if I really want to leave the game, because that transition seems like it might be kind of strange for me. But then didn't pass the physical because I had 2 knee operations after the season. So then I just said, okay, it's time. I'm 38, 2 knee operations. I'm not a world-class sprinter. I'm not, I can still throw the ball, but I have a torn rotator. I have a torn labrum after the season. So I had a lot of issues going on. And so now it said, let me enjoy, some time off. So then I transitioned into saying, okay, I'm just going to go help my son's youth team and just be a part of that, and not really coach, but just be there and try to help out as much as I can. And then you get the juices flowing for games and things like that. And then I said, okay, maybe I should look at coaching at where they're going to go to high school. And so I became a high school head coach, coached there for 4 years, which was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed the kids, and just teaching them what I know about the game. And then my daughter graduated from high school. We moved back to Pittsburgh, stayed in coaching at Central Catholic, and then just said, you know what? My kids are getting older. They're going to graduate. My son graduated. It's time for me to get out, right? My kids are going to be gone. I need to do something else with my life. And so then I transitioned and started looking for other things, but in businesses that were kind of related to football, that I still could stay within the sport that I know.
Right.
And then, but do something different. And so that's been very interesting for me.
Yeah. So so now you've gotten yourself involved with a couple of different companies, and they are, I guess, it's interesting because one of them is really conceptually related to football, but it's, one of the, I guess we'll say, one of the people that are on the forefront of it is a son of a famous baseball player who I believe you said was your idol. So walk me through what got you initially interested in RC21X. We'll talk about that company in a minute. But what was it that initially got you interested in that? How did you first hear about them? And, and how was it sort of an interesting connection to your boyhood baseball idol?
Well, they always say it's who you know, not what you know. And so my wife volunteered for my son's high school football team. And this was my youngest son's senior year. And I wasn't coaching anymore because I had to just kind of get away from that. Uh-huh. And she kept telling me, you got to meet Clarence, you got to meet Clarence, you got to meet Clarence. And I said, okay, we never met, but my wife used to see him all the time because she volunteered so much over there and fed the kids meals and all those types of things. And so we were playing a local high school that was close to where we lived. Pittsburgh Central Catholic, people live all over, right? It's Catholic school. Yep. You don't have to just be in that area. So there's people from all over Pittsburgh area. So we were playing a school called Penn Hills. I said, let's have a big tailgate at our house before everybody goes, parents go to the game. We'll start it early, and anybody who shows up, we'll just have an open door. So that day, Clarence came in, met Clarence for the first time. He and I sat in the kitchen, ignored everybody else for about an hour and a half, told me what he was doing. I believed in it. Next day I called him and said, do you have room? I'd love to be a part of your company, and I believe in what you're doing. And he said, sure, come on over. Why don't you come visit the office and see what we're doing? Went in, met everyone, kind of worked out between he and I really well. We're really close, and just kind of how it started for me was transitioning from that. I was looking for other opportunities, and I really liked this opportunity for me. And the fact that, dealing with brain health, and then also, like you said, dealing with why the name they have, RC21X, Roberto Clemente, kind of hook, line, and sinker for me right there.
Yeah. So RC21 is Roberto Clemente, number 21, and he was your baseball idol when you were growing up. I guess he was. I'm a little bit older, but I do remember him playing just in the tail end, before he passed away tragically. But it's the company itself. So walk me through. Tell me a little bit about the company itself and what the goal and the mission is of RC21X, because it's no offense to the title of the company, but you don't know. It's not like, you know what you're getting with RC21X. It sounds kind of like maybe a vitamin or something or whatever it is. We don't know. So, but
right,
I'm hoping we'll know a lot more. So tell me a little bit about the company.
It's really funny you say that, because I was like that too. That doesn't have anything to do with, but then they're like, well, what does Apple, right? If you hear Apple for the first time, you don't really know what Apple is. Obviously you do now, because I'm on an Apple right now. You know what I mean? So it's crazy how that works. So I got that part of it. And then, so the story about why the company really started, a kid at the high school where my kids went and Clarence's son went, he was at a football game watching two other teams play. He sneezed during that game, and he was going to play one of those two teams in the playoffs. He sneezed during that game and started to get really sick. They didn't know why. He went to the EMS. They said, you must be on drugs or alcohol or something. They said, no, we're not. And, his friends were like, he doesn't do that stuff. He's not that kind of kid. They rushed him to the hospital, took a brain scan because they said he's a football player. He must have a concussion or symptoms of it. Didn't find anything. Could hardly walk. They had to wheelchair him out to his car, put him in his car, sent him home. They said, go see your general practitioner next day. The next morning, his dad couldn't even wake him up, get him out of bed. Dad carried him back to the car, took him back to the hospital, and did brain scans and other imaging, never found anything. And later that day, he stroked. The next day, he stroked again and eventually passed. Well, here, what they found was when he sneezed, plaque in his artery let loose and collapsed his artery, and he wasn't getting any blood to the brain, right? So we knew something was going on, right? You knew that once they did that autopsy and they found that, right, Clarence was like, well, we got to change that, because I just went through a funeral where I saw grown men crying and kids carrying their friend's casket. That shouldn't happen, right? And all it would have taken was a 10-minute procedure to put a stent in his neck and open that artery back up to let the blood, right? So Clarence said, I got to do something. He was already within working with another company that were kind of dealing in concussions and things like that. And he said, it's not about that. It's bigger than that, right? Because this kid didn't have a concussion. He had something else, but it harmed his performance. So what we do is we look at brain performance. If we knew that, by looking and playing our application, if he couldn't even picked up a phone, you knew his performance was so bad he should have never left the hospital, and they would have kept digging. I think if he would have stayed in that hospital, right, then they would have said, okay, we can find the problem. So really what our tool is, it's an aid. We're going to let you play some series of games and really understand where you are, basically give you your baseline so that you have a measurement and you can continually monitor yourself. And for me as a parent, my sons both have had concussions. My daughter was a goalie in field hockey and lacrosse, and she's had multiple concussions. And when you don't have any information about a concussion, they've taken tests at school, but the parents don't get that. So I believed in this because I wanted it for me. Being a former football player, I've had them, but I wanted it more for my kids. I needed to understand where they were. And then to really understand, so when my son had a major concussion, he was out for about 6 weeks. They said, look, don't go back to school until you're feeling better. It's all subjective, right? How do I know? My son barely wants to talk to me anyway, right? So it's all subjective. So now I have a tool that's objective. I can see his numbers and say, look, buddy, your numbers aren't where they need to be. We're going to keep you out of school. Or look, your numbers are really good. There's something else going on. Let's talk about it.
So you've leapt ahead a little bit. I'd like to take a step back and describe to me. So RC21X is a company, but tell me about the product itself. What is the tool that you're talking about that, I know that it's a desktop thing and it's also an app you can put on your phone, but tell me sort of the basics of what's exactly happening. So let's say I decide I'm really interested in this tool because whether it's my son or daughter or myself, maybe, I play in a men's ice hockey league and I've been knocked around a few times. So maybe I want to, for my own interests, really get a feel for what my brain health is. Now, this is not necessarily mental health. This is brain health because the brain is the most complex organ. I mean, it's incredibly complex, right? So how do you figure out, how do you almost make it like, what is this doing here? I mean, is it, I'm assuming it's as you like to say, an easier way to really measure things, right? So walk me through. I've got it on my desktop. What am I doing every day conceptually with that?
Let me ask you a question. So
sure.
If you had to measure your different parts of your brain, how would you have to do that right now?
Aside from cutting open my scalp and getting out of like my inch thing, ruler, no, I have no clue. I don't.
So you have to go to a neuropsychologist, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And they put you through the battery of tests. There's different tests out there that you can take. I'm trying to think of the latest one that.
Well, that's probably one of the cheaper things to do, I guess, right?
I don't think it's very cheap at all. And we had time to go through that battery of tests.
Yeah.
Okay. So all those tests that a neuropsych would put you through, the tabletop apparatus, the pen and paper tests, the finger tapping, all those types of things.
Okay.
What our company really did, we took those tests that have been validated for years by these neuropsychs and give you kind of a check on your brain.
Okay.
We took those and we webified them. And we wrote new algorithms for them so that we can put them on this little computer right here, and everyone can have it. And that's really what makes our company special. So we wanted to take those things, and we wanted to through the University of Texas in Arlington and Dr. George Kondrasky. He's been studying human performance since the early 80s. Wow. And we said, let's take those tests, let's put it with human performance, and let's make a performance monitoring tool that we can look at everyone's brain and make it easy to do. And so that we can have information in our pocket. There's so many things that we have right now that are out there, whether it's, my Apple Watch, right? That we can monitor my steps. I can see what my heart rate is. I can check all these things. There's no easy way for us to look at the brain. You've never gone to your doctor and he says, hey, Mark, how's your brain doing today? They don't ask a question.
Right.
Because he'd have to send you to a neuropsych, then the neuropsych would have to evaluate it, and the doctor really doesn't know. We just want to give you a measurement so that you can easily assess where you are. So if that measurement changes, we all have good and bad days, but if that measurement changes, you know that you need to go see your doctor and start a conversation.
Now, in your opinion, Gus, how often should you be checking this sort of thing? I mean, I know you can do it on a daily basis, but for example, I was just thinking, when I go to my annual physical, they do the EKG, they check, all kinds of things, my blood, my this, my that. But, you're right. He never asked me, hey, what's going on upstairs? He may ask, are you sleeping okay? And that sort of thing, but very basic questions. But is that something that you think should be incorporated into everyone's annual physical also? Or is it just simply more for those people that have gone through some sort of trauma? What do you think?
Look, it's the greatest invention ever made. It's right between your ears. It's the most important organ we have. Right? Because you can get a new heart, you can't get a new brain. My dad got a new heart, right? Stayed alive for another 8 years. So wow. It's the most important organ we have. And really, who do you have to go see once a year? Is your doctor. But right. Doctors never talk about it. I'm not saying this is a perfect tool for them, but I'm saying it's a way that we got to start the conversation about our brains, right? All these things are coming up. When I left the NFL, they never gave me, right? They said, take care of yourself, good luck. Right? They never gave me any tools. I want this to be used by every player, every athlete, every sport out there, that really look at yourself. We get all these other tools that we can buy over the counter. There's nothing for this. And that's what we've created, a consumer-friendly tool that you can just take a measurement. If you have one measurement, it's no different than standing on a weight scale, right? I know that, hey, I gain weight after, I got to lose weight. If I want my body to feel good, if I want to live a long time, if I want to get to the fourth quarter of life, and hopefully overtime, right, in life, then I got to do certain things to monitor myself. But there's one thing that I can never check by myself, and that's my brain performance until now.
You're absolutely right. That's great. So they can either obviously check this on their desktop or they're on their phones. So they get these, there are all these data points. What'd you say, 1,500 on the phone and 3,000 on the desktop. There's all these data points that can coalesce into really a sort of being able to educate your doctor on where you stand brain health wise. And that's, one of the things that we've talked about is how people oftentimes, and it's not just related to your brain, it's related to anything in your body that you feel you could be suffering from. There could be issues and you've got some telltale signs, but you don't want to address them because most people honestly are afraid to know. They brace themselves for potentially bad news. but they feel that if they don't go, then they'll never get that bad news. And, I like to tell people, and I know you do too, Gus, that when you address something like this, especially in a way that it's so easy. I mean, look, it takes just a few minutes every day to go through this, to play these games. It's games. It's not even, some sort of torturous whatever. It's games. And for them to go through this and then being able to go to your doctor, I mean, imagine how good you'll feel if you go to your doctor, you present all this information, and the doctor can say, look, based on all this information, your brain's doing fine. You're good to go. Great. Alternatively, if they see something that's concerning them, then you can address it now instead of waiting till it's too late, right? I mean, it's to me, I know you're biased because you're in this company, but to me as an outsider, this seems like why wouldn't somebody be doing this? Why wouldn't healthcare companies be implementing this and basically be pushing it in front of all of us and saying, look, here's a tool, use it.
Well, I mean, it makes so much sense, right? So Dr. Paul Nussbaum is our chief clinical officer. He's an adjunct professor at the University of Pittsburgh. He's been talking about this all over the world, about brain health and how being proactive in your life is so important, right? Because they make all these drugs now, right? They say this one, this, and this, and they say that it's going to help Alzheimer's and dementia, but really they don't have anything. There's no drug out there that's going to cure that or help that. And what Dr. Nussbaum always says is taking a proactive approach to your wellness, right? That you're going to do different things, whether it's mental stimulation, spirituality, socialization, diet and exercise, and change your life, it's going to help your brain. And so that's why he promotes us and our tool, because he said, look, it's a proactive way to look at your brain, that you now can get a measurement, right? Dr. Nussbaum has done all these talks all over the world, and he goes and motivates people to change their lifestyle. But he's never been able to give them something when besides his words and some of his knowledge, when he leaves that talk. Now with the Roberto app, he can give them something to go along with what he's preaching. And that's why he's a part of our company, and that's why he believes in what we're doing, a proactive approach to staying healthy. Because look, how many people do you know have worked through their whole life and then they quit work and they die?
Yeah.
A lot, right?
Yeah, of course.
And people are working longer and longer and longer. And it's called the golden years because you're supposed to be able to retire and have some fun at the end of your life.
Right.
But not many people do that. So if we can give people a little more information, some more tools that kind of help them through their life, and if you can track your brain health through your life, boy, that's a great thing.
So Gus, tell me, like, let's say I'm listening or watching this episode. I wouldn't be doing that. I'm doing it, but someone else is watching this and they're saying, I want this. I want to get a hold of this product or this, this app, etc. Now, do they reach out to, you directly? Do they reach out to their healthcare provider, their doctor? What's the best way they can get a hold of it?
Well, hopefully in the future we can get on some healthcare plans and their wellness plans that their members can get this technology. But right now, you can go into your app store. You can just type in Roberto, and we're going to be the first ones to pop up in your app on iOS and Android. Or you can just go to robertoapp.com, read about our company, read about the science behind the tool, and then you'll be able to really download it. You download it on your phone like anything else.
Yeah.
Put the information in and start using it right away. And what I encourage people to do always is you play it 4 times. So once you play it 4 times, we call it your colors. You talked before about the 1,500 data points of information.
Yeah. Right.
Well, obviously, none of us are neuroscientists, right? Most of the people aren't. So we won't know what that information is really saying. So we break it down to red, green, and blue, right? Green is your normal range.
Okay.
Blue is a new normal high. So if you're doing better in things, you're seeing an increase in performance, and red is a decrease in performance. So we all have good and bad days. So hopefully most days are in green. Sometimes they're in red if we didn't sleep last night, or if anything can happen. If you start a new medication, if something else, like say your kids, right? You're stressed out, that can give you a red, right? But it can always go back to green. But if you have those reds consecutively, that's where we're really saying that, hey, look, I've had 10 reds in a row. Something's going on. My brain is not working like it should. Now I really have objective information to take to that doctor.
That's great. That's great. So the other thing is, I feel that it'd be great if our listeners could really reach out to you about, well, how can they get these in front of their healthcare providers, and or if there are people out there that are working for healthcare providers, let's get this out there, right? How can they reach out to you directly to get more information about how to do that? What's the best way?
Yeah, they can email me. It's Gus F. So Gus F as in Frerotte or Frank, and at rc21x.com. So Gus F at rc21x.com. Anyone can email me. And I think just starting this conversation, people go and say, we need these kind of tools. So Highmark, we're looking at really working with Highmark right now and going on their wellness side. They have a mindfulness section. I saw that Apple, right? They just came out with a new mindfulness section on their health app.
Right.
We fit perfect with all these, right? Because they give you a lot of information, but there's more than that, right? Now we can give you a measurement. We want to add to those things that people are already saying and doing. Now we want to give them a tool that they can actually use to look at different areas of their brain.
Oh, that's great. Gus, this has been a phenomenal episode for me, because I think that, one thing I love to do with the Make Your Mark podcast is really try to not just obviously talk about how you're making your mark, which is great, but more importantly, really talking about something that can significantly improve the health and the sort of the futures of so many people out there. And I think this has been wonderful. I know that I do want to mention just for a minute or so, a completely different type of company and product that you're involved with. So tell me a little bit about 4View and what that's all about.
So it's pretty interesting. I met Brendan, who's owner of 4View. He went to my neighbor's house, and they both went to Penn State together. And so Dr. Capretto called me and said, "Hey, I got this guy over here. I think you should come look. He has a great product, and check it out." And Brendan actually had a system that was on a face mask, and it had 4 cameras looking out from the face mask, and they were mounted on the side. And it's basically a first-person point of view.
Okay.
Right. And so I said, wow, this is really cool. I said, imagine what a quarterback can really see in practice and in games if he gets what he's looking at actually, and not some coach that's 30,000 feet up. Okay. Because it's different. I've had coaches come up to me and say, why didn't you throw that? I said, did you see that 6'8" lineman running with his hands straight up in the air? Right. Leon Lett was running at me. They called him Big Cat. I couldn't see over him. So you have to move and check it down to the back. And they're like, well, the guy was wide open. And you hear announcers saying it all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Until you get that point of view of what the quarterback's actually looking at, or a lineman or a running back sees, you don't really know. And so through working with them and the team that they have, these guys are all from Carnegie Mellon. And
so they're sort of smart, right?
It's a little bit, yeah. I mean, I got what they were doing right away when I walked in.
Obviously.
But if you remember the first Super Bowl that was in New York, right? Do you remember that game?
Of course, yeah.
So that was the first 360 vision they did.
Yes.
Okay, so these were the guys that invented this technology. I can't remember exactly how many cameras. I want to say it was like 20, maybe a little more, a little less.
Right. Yeah.
But they had to go around and they had to put all these cameras in the stadium, so that when you got to watch the game, they could take it and they could go to any around.
Yep.
So yeah, spin it around. The amazing thing is they didn't realize they set up all the cameras, and when the stadium got full, it actually sunk 2 inches. So minutes before the game, they had to run around to every camera and readjust them, which was amazing to me. And the story was incredible when you hear it. These are the same guys that created that technology.
Interesting.
And really what it is it's a stabilized camera system. So that no matter how fast you run, how much your head shakes, or however it spins, it's going to stay on the same field of view that you see naturally. Whether you're pointing down, it can look up. And so they do some incredible things with the technology, and it's all through software. Have you ever seen a camera company that's on a gimbal? Like if somebody's holding a camera, you see those guys in the NFL films, they run out there and they're holding this camera up and right, and it's on this big contraption. We don't need that, right? So what we did is we took 4 cameras, put it down into one, and we put it right on the face mask, and we put it right under this first bar. Right. It's an 180-degree camera where it's a 90-degree view, and we really have made it so that you can see what the quarterback is looking at. And I really believe that we're going to be the first company that can go out there in a real game and you can see a new view of football.
That'd be incredible.
Just a couple years ago, I don't know when it was, they put the cameras in the pylon.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And then you see some referees, but when they show the referees, they only show them when they're not moving. Right. And you never see a referee running down the sideline watching the play. Right. With our cameras, they can do that now. And so we've had several teams use it in practice. We've had several college teams use it. Notre Dame used it this year. LSU's tried it. A bunch of schools, and just a different perspective for coaches to watch and teach from. And really what they're learning is we put a microphone in there. So now we can actually hear what the quarterbacks are telling everyone, right? Because that's happened to me, and the coach goes, "Hey, what'd you say there?" And you're like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't remember what I said." And you knew you said the wrong thing, but they can actually coach. The players may not like it, but it's a great tool. We also see it helping when the backups come in, that they can use the same language, same snap count, same voice inflection.
Interesting. And, good. Wow.
It's all about winning, and it's all about trying to make everybody better.
But look, as you said, though, there's so many other applications to this, because to me anyway, and I do a fair amount of the business coaching, and one of the things when I first hear about this is there's so many potential uses for this, not just football, but obviously all the sports, yes. But if you think about it, you could have construction workers wearing it. You could have coal miners wearing it. You could have all kinds of people in so many different capacities wearing. I know you talked about the military is using this also, but the technology is so incredible and has so many uses that, I think there's quite a bright future for that company when things get really up and running with it. So
you talk about body cameras, right?
Yeah.
When you watch somebody run with a body camera on.
Right.
I mean, it's bouncing all over the place. Right now, if they used our technology, they could really keep it steady and motionless so that it looks normal. Right. It's the amazing thing is when somebody is running full speed and you put a side by side of what they're actually seeing and what the camera's showing, and you watch them run, they're moving so much, but the camera's not moving and it looks boring. So it's working. And that's really what we want to get to.
That's incredible, because I think we're all used to having a perspective of an athlete or something where it is a lot of moving around this, and you're kind of like, oh, you're kind of feeling sick watching it. So
exactly.
That's great. That's amazing. So tying this all together, Gus, I want to throw a quick, I have a little segment that I like to call Hit Your Mark. And it's just a few quick questions that I'm going to throw at you. A couple of them are really softball ones that I'm sure you'll be able to handle pretty easily. But the very first one is pretty, well, I don't know if it's simple or not, but you threw over 100 touchdown passes in your career. Is there one that stands out in your mind as like, wow, that was awesome?
Well, my last year playing in the NFL, I was playing against the Bears. Our team had a 4th down stop, goal line stop. And so we get the ball on the 1 yard line, right? Coach calls 9.99, which is all go. I'm playing the Bears. I'm 38 years old. First, really one of the only times I've ever got to have this route called for me. Usually it never works. Right. Drop back. They're playing cover 3. Peanut Tillman is the cornerback on my left, his right. And he cheats to my tight end. And Visante Sanko was our tight end. And I stared at him and I saw the corner cheating. I threw it over his head. Bernard Berrien caught it, about a 47-yard throw, and ran the rest of the way for a 99-yard touchdown. I was with the Vikings. It was a memorable moment, and I'll never forget it.
Yeah, can't do much better than that, I think. So that's, unless it happened at the,
one of 12 people that have done 99-yarders. So it's pretty exciting.
Oh, there you go. And what was your number again?
12.
There you go. Anyway, good. That's pretty cool. Who sacked you the hardest? Who hit you the hardest, would you say?
Everyone.
Yeah. All right.
No, one of the worst ones probably in Washington playing the Giants. Left tackle whiffed on Michael Strahan, hit me in the back. Peed blood for about 4 days. That one hurt. That's one of the ones where you hear every bone in your body just kind of crack. So, yeah.
But not in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, not in a good way. So, guy, you probably clapped when it happened.
Possible. I would never root for someone to be injured permanently.
Oh, come on.
Well, not you. Well, I don't know. Anyway, my poor Giants. Anyway, so in terms of, tell me a little bit now of, and I want this to be sort of a up to today kind of a thing. Throw out, maybe, this is a tough question, but what is your proudest moment? Because look, unfortunately, or not fortunately, but you've got kids, you've got this, you've got all kinds of different things going on. But if you took a step back and just thought to yourself, well, you know what, I'm really proud of blank. What do you think it would be?
I don't know. That's a pretty good question, because usually it's, kids. I'm proud of that. I've been married for 25 years. We've had ups and downs, like everybody does, and it wasn't something that either one of us said that there's an end to this. And so we've worked through it, and I'm proud of that factor that my wife Ann and I have kind of raised 3 amazing children. I'm proud that I came from a tiny town. And people always say, look, you got to go to the best schools and do all this. And I don't believe that. I said, I tell kids all the time, if you're good at what you do and you have a lot of passion, they're going to find you no matter where you are. And I came from a town of 4,000 people and ended up playing 15 years in the NFL. And hopefully, with all my experience and everything I have, I can help other people in their journey and through life.
Well, look, that was my next question is, what is, we all sometimes think about, well, gee, what kind of legacy are we leaving behind? And not suggesting that anybody is leaving anything behind now, but, how do you think you want to be sort of effectively remembered, and not, currently remembered too? It's okay. But, what do you want people to think of you?
Well, obviously I've always tried to be a pretty humble person. I think that a lot of people, I'd like to say that I'm pretty easy to get along with. I don't have a big ego. I think at some point everybody has an ego. I mean, if you want to be the best in the world and play at the highest level, you have to have some of that.
Yeah.
But one of the things, you want to be remembered for is that I think, just like my dad was, everybody said he was a great human being. Obviously we all have different walks that we go on, right? I have good friends that I'm so impressed with that do so much charity work, like Chris Long with the Eagles, whether it's waterboys.org and donating his whole paycheck. Like that to me is incredible. And we all have different things that we do in our life. If I can just be a good person and help people through this walk of life, and whether it's one piece of advice or being there for them, whatever it is, then that's really what I want to be remembered.
That's great, Gus. Awesome. Last question. If you had the opportunity to have drinks or dinner, et cetera, with 3 people, dead or alive, who would you pick now, do you think?
Oh, that's a really good question, because, there's a lot of people out there. I mean, obviously I've met some of my heroes in football. My number was number 12 for a reason, because I watched Terry Bradshaw growing up.
Yeah.
And I would think that one of them would be Roberto Clemente, just because of who he was, how he played the game. You hear so many great things now, knowing his son, seeing his museum, everything he was about. I would love to sit with him. Good. I would love to sit with some of our past presidents and just kind of, because we're going through some crazy times right now. And whatever you believe, I believe that, and I'm in Pittsburgh right now, and we just had a horrific shooting at a synagogue that should have never happened. And there's so much hate in the world, and you just want to meet. I'd love to, whether it's Dalai Lama or people, we should be trying to look for an answer instead of just continue to be divisive. And I hate that. And we really need to be more inclusive about everyone. Yeah. And that's really what I'd love to see. And so whether, I don't really have a specific person, but there's so many people I think that have lived a life that can help us through that.
Oh, great answer. I've always wondered what it would be like to sit down with George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, or, even or even like sit down with Napoleon and see how crazy he was, or not crazy, or whatever it was, but or Christopher Columbus, or just some of these people that, some of these early discoverers, although they, I think there's mixed feelings on how they actually went about discovering places. But, I think it would have been really interesting to see, historically what some, King Tut, I don't know, stuff like that. That always intrigues me more so than, having a drink with Oprah or Kobe Bryant or whatever it is, but more so, I think, and I like your pick of Roberto Clemente because I think he was, really the epitome of a humble player. He was incredibly talented, but he really dedicated his life to being, I don't want to say a servant, but a servant to his people and to other people, right? So, I always respect that. But that was great, Gus. So, we've covered a lot of ground. I think I'm thrilled to hear about the work that you're doing with RC21X. I think it's going to be something that is going to really help a huge amount of people, and it's something that I feel pretty strongly about. I think it's I'm certainly going to try to see who I can connect you with regarding whether it's putting you in touch with other people in the healthcare profession that can really get this into their policyholders' their hands, right, or their minds, right. But it's something that look, you're doing a great job with what you're doing now. The 4 of you thing is also really interesting. So, Gus, you've done a really nice job, I think, of really transitioning nicely from your career and playing career as a professional athlete and towards the work that you're doing now. And I think it's really, I think you're a good role model that other people can look to and say, look, here's a guy that's really taken the tools that he developed as an athlete and really transitioned into something that's going to be beneficial. So there you go. Thanks again for being on the Make Your Mark podcast. You've been great.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, it's my pleasure. And look forward to seeing how this is all going to develop going forward.
The light is trying to catch up with me again.
I know it is. Quick, hurry up. We got to end.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, listen, have a great rest of your day. And thanks for being on the show.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.